Hey, what's up? Welcome and thank you for coming. We had some really big stuff, which was basically the interviews, right? So I've caught little snippets, but most of it has been pretty much not watched. As I was telling Drush in chat, it's going to be pretty much a new experience for me. I'm really excited to see what information has been divulged. I heard Yokai Theater and Envious, or basically DA and Mick Stackerson, they were able to get released some of that pre-NDA verbal release. I actually asked not Steven. I asked the Intrepid community team if I would be able to provide more context to that conversation, which I understand is it's like a really vague thing to be like, hey, can I just add context? Because like, what does that mean for like context revolving those topics and stuff? So it's really vague. So they basically were like, no. So I won't be able to really talk more than what's face value for the pre A2 NDA testing. That's understandable on Intrepid's part. If they were like, yo, just talk about whatever, it'd be basically like releasing the verbal NDA for me. And we're only like 12 days away. So, or we're getting really close to 12 days, probably 11 days now, if you're watching it on YouTube. So I'm going to be basically watching this stuff, reacting at face value. I'm going to try to not break NDA since it's so very, very close. Yeah, exactly. I think I'm going to start with the Vlhadus one, since that one happened first. So I think we're just going to go in chronological order. So let's see here if I can just move to...
Well, hello, and welcome to the very special episode of episode 100 of the 1v1 podcast. And I have a very special guest. He is the man who inspired myself and countless others to make YouTube channels of a game that quite literally does not exist. He is our Sandalord and savior, our creative...
Oh, and I have been given
Sharif.
Permission by both Yokai Theater and Vlhadus to react to these things. So, just keeping that in mind.
Dude,
I am excited to be here. I can't believe 100 episodes. Holy shit.
Plus a little bit of bonus episodes, right?
But
yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy. I can't believe that we're at this point. I can't believe that I even have you on to talk Ashes of Creation, you know, a little bit about yourself and everything like that. And you know, just to start it off, like how's everything been going as far as like testing and everything like that?
It has been a little bit of a mad dash here over the course of the last few months. We have officially now invited all of the Alpha 1 testers. So they are currently in the pre-A2 testing.
Let's go.
And we are finding as many bugs and crashes and issues as we can. I think that the majority of the testers will tell you that, you know, test after test, they're seeing improvement, which is good. We are very much in a test and react phase with the studio as a whole, as a team, right? It's kind of like daily triage, hot fix, you know, approaches that we are doing. We decided last weekend to extend the testing 24/7. So we've been up 24/7 over the course of the last
that's awesome
7 days or so. Or 8 days.
Also, it's kind of funny because like as I'm watching this, I'm like, oh yeah, this is what I can talk about for the future. So it's like kind of protecting myself from the NDA. It's like, oh, okay, well, Steven mentioned these things, so I can talk about at least this much, you know? So it kind of helps me.
Was a little bit of an adjustment for the team. Right now we are working 7 days and we are, you know, trying to get everything in order, trying to get everything in a position where, you know, obviously stability is the utmost importance. And then after that is performance for us. And then, you know, we have a host of different gameplay bugs that exist within the game that of course we're going to be addressing, but we're focused on stability and performance right now.
That's awesome. I mean, the thing, Steven, like when I go and talk to people in Discords, when I talk about Ashes of Creation, especially going off of feedback and just off of, you know, we always say this is going to be a testing and not a game, right? We've been preaching that, we've been saying that, you know, content creators, yourself, you know, Margaret, But there's a lot of people that I've talked to that have never really tested an MMO at an alpha state. There's a lot of lack of knowledge of like, well, what do I do if I'm not playing a game? Then I'm testing, and what am I doing? Stuff repeated.
The new Lazy Peon video actually just came out, and there's a bunch of people that are like in the comments like, "Oh, why is that goblin like frame drop like so intense? Like that, what a shit game!" And it's like people really are not ready for an alpha state. They're really not ready for like what an alpha truly is. So like. I think this is a great question to ask Steven is like, hey, what's up with that? Like, how do we like keep on informing the community? Like, is there anything better that we can do as a community to like kind of like project these things? Because that has been like one of the biggest like concerns is like, what if people hate it because they're just seeing the alpha view and not the launch view? And so I think that's a really good question to at least start out with and ask. Because yeah, people aren't ready. And they're not going to be. So
really,
we just got to keep preaching.
The first question I truly have is like, what kind of feedback are you guys looking for from Alpha 2 from a player perspective?
Yeah, true.
And are you going to be giving new testers like direction and what you guys want?
Like I expect everything
specifically
to basically go to shit, and like people think Ashes of Creation doesn't look good,
which was,
and then it gets closer to launch, and they're like, oh wow, this is actually a good game.
Haven't gone through this process.
That would be my expectation.
That is a byproduct of the
just endure the hate for a little bit, I guess.
Right? Like, yes, there are games out there that have had transparent development processes. We're seeing that more and more, right, over the course of these last several years. But I'm not sure that there are a lot that are doing it to the degree we are, but also to the exposure that we are as well. Like, people are aware of Ashes of Creation who wouldn't traditionally be aware of games that are going through this phase of development, right? And as a result of that, you're going to get a lot of individuals who are only interested in playing a game, and they can't bifurcate what is their desire to play the game versus the stage we are in, which is still very much testing and building the game. And so, when we talk about like direction that we give our testers, every day we are interacting with our test group right now, right? We have thousands of Alpha 1 testers that are a part of the testing Discord, the NDA Discord, who are receiving, multiple updates daily from the community team, from the development team. They're working with the development team in voice channels as they're playing. We're actively collecting logs from them. We're actively doing focus groups with them. We're engaged with the audience in an effort to help guide both our prioritization of bugs that we need to fix based on impact, our iteration and how we address issues that players are experiencing with certain gameplay systems. Balance wise, right? We're now doing kind of broad stroke balance approaches to hone in on, what we want to iterate on from a combat perspective, from an ability damage perspective, from an economy perspective. All of these things are being done in league with the testers that we have participating. And, it is important that when we talk about what feedback represents, that a lot of times players enjoy getting into the solutions realm of how do I solve a problem?
Absolutely.
That's not necessarily where we want a lot of players to go.
Are actually pretty good.
Where we want players to focus on is helping to describe the problem, helping make that problem statement. Because there's a lot of connectivity between all of these systems within the game that we can't expect the players to be aware of uniformly, right? And so as a result of that, the more detail that players give in why they disliked an interaction or why they liked an interaction or how that gameplay was not fun for them or whatever, right? Describing the problem statement in a very detailed fashion gives us the information we need to then solution form. And we solution form with the community right now. Like with our players, we're discussing, our approach, what we're going.
So basically, like, when players are giving feedback, it's a lot easier to like play the game, play it as normal. Yeah, exactly. I think it's exactly what you said, Dresh, is where it's like you want to describe like, hey, I don't like this because it feels limiting or not like difficult enough in like this way or another way. That's the type of feedback that they're looking for. They're not like, oh my god, there should be like 3 dragons added to this castle siege so that we can go fight this thing, and that would be really cool. Like that would be what the community is all like basically always fears, is like what scope creep, right? So like giving your resolution to things probably doesn't help Intrepid that much. And like I'm a little bit at fault for this as well, where we're talking about certain systems or something like that. Like Vertec and I were talking about how if we added a PvE or like a PvX instance combat thing where you have like a PvE raid boss that you have to beat in like a certain amount of time, and then you go to the next room, and then there's like another team that's also doing the PvX thing, then you both fight over that boss, and then at the very end there's just a last man standing arena type of thing. That would be a cool game mode, but like obviously they're not going to try to do something like that prior to launch, right? Like that's like an end game thing. That's not anything close to what they really want to do with the game prior to launch. So I think these cool ideas and stuff that people have, they're probably glossing over a lot of that, and they're kind of just focusing on like, okay, does this feel good? Does this combat feel good for you? If it feels bad, what makes it bad? Are cooldowns good? Is like mob HP good? Like these mechanical things that they could tweak, especially like engine wise, is probably more beneficial than just like balance changes. They are doing balance changes, as Steven said. They're like doing patch notes and stuff now. So there's like a lot of improvements that are happening with the game, but these are like tweaks that will kind of get all the way throughout phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, which will be 1 to 2 years, maybe longer if like, you know, they do like they don't think the game's ready yet, or the content isn't like actually coming out fast enough. So like, yeah, there's just a lot that they need to do, and they need to focus. And so they're trying to improve, fix, tweak, and take that feedback that players give and kind of formulate it to their philosophies and their core pillars and move forward with that. They keep saying it, but like Ashes of Creation just, it's not made for everybody. It's not going to have everything that you want. So you're going to have to take things at face value.
To do as part of our patch notes process as well. Like, you know, we made these changes because of this. We made these changes, you know, because of your feedback.
Well, you guys did. Oh, I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
No, you're good.
Well, I was going to say, y'all did an excellent job. Like, that was why I actually became a content creator, because, you know, the 2020 interview with you and Asmin was a huge pivotal moment of the whole Lazy Peon video. And then that whole time I was watching all the way until the release of Alpha 1, and y'all's feedback and how y'all handled the discourse of interaction with the community is what really sold me, because companies don't do that, man. They don't offer direction. True. They don't, right. You know, if you're trying to test something and they're like, well, just play the game and just leave whatever feedback you want. And that kind of leads into the next question is, you know, I've talked to so many people that are very adamant, Steven, about certain systems, and they want them changed in the way they deem is the correct way. And so when it comes to certain systems in Ashes of Creation, which systems will never change due to feedback? Because I think there's a lot of people that are going to try to change systems that are fundamentally just not going to.
Like risk versus reward, PvX.
You know, when I think about what the identity is of Ashes, right? It's
kind of like it's open interactive gameplay
to that identity, such as
like dynamic changing and stuff. Yeah,
such as a dynamic world, right? And those big terms, those big keywords, they have a lot of supporting systems underneath them, which could see potential balance changes. They could see potential interaction changes, slight. But the intent of what that those systems provide, which is this concept of always being aware of your other players and their disposition towards you, right? Of managing your reputation, of building alliances, and maintaining enemies. Like, that's the PvX realm. And
Right.
what systems support that?
Which is why I think a lot of us follow Ashes, is because of the core pillars.
Our reputation and citizenship systems, like all of these pseudo faction systems exist, right? And so it's kind of difficult to give an answer that's really broad stroke here about what systems will we never change. I think it's what intents will we never change, right? Because
correct, like
that's a really good idea.
I think there's a lot of people that are trying to change the philosophy of this game. Like, people are asking for PvE servers when that's something that is never going to happen. But it's kind of hard to, as like a content creator, it's kind of hard to tell people that, because they're like, well, they're a company that listens, and it's like, well, yes, but they're not going to listen to everything. They're, you know what I mean? Like, it's impossible to do that as a company.
Yeah,
Vlhadus hits it right on the head.
Part of, as a content creator,
yeah, they listen, but not to everything.
Interfacing with those players is that, look, a game like Ashes is very direct about what it's trying to be.
Exactly.
Right? We are telling you what we're trying to build. Now, the results.
It's Richie's fault.
We may not always hit the mark, and that's where we come back and we iterate on something, right? And we take the players' feedback. But what we're trying to do will stay consistent. And that is really a dynamic world that is fraught with danger, both player and environment. Right?
Absolutely.
And that's at the crux of what Ashes is. And on the dynamic world side, things that aren't going to change ever is that a lot of our systems are predicated on player activity, right? And those predications are usually surfaced through the node system, are usually surfaced through the world spawn
Thanks,
systems,
Guy.
right?
Thank you for coming.
And
appreciate you.
Seeing a world that changes day to day is also the intent. So those are the things that really aren't going to change. The dynamicism that we predicate world activity off of, as well as the player versus X approach.
Okay.
I also wanted to add, like, the life or death of Ashes of Creation is definitely going to be, how many players do we have? Like, are there 3 times last night? Dang. Sorry, ADHD. Yeah, the thing is like, Ashes of Creation is going to be a game that lives or dies by player population. If player population, like, if you need to do content and there's no player population, or like you're a new player and everybody's like max level and you're not being able to clear low level content, that's going to be the death of Ashes of Creation. So these are things that, like, I'm gearing my feedback towards, is primarily like, hey, I see potential issues with what's going on in the future. Like, not the first month, not the first year, but like 2 years, 5 years down the road. What could be a potential problem for Ashes of Creation? What could be a problem for new players down the road? So I think a lot of people are really focused on, like, the rush, the arcade rush type thing, where you just try to get highest level, get your freehold or whatever, and then just grind or whatever. And I think that's fine. People want to focus on that because it's going to be a big portion of Ashes of Creation. I think probably the most fun of Ashes of Creation is going to be discovering the world and building it up from scratch. And especially like on a fresh server. And I'm wondering what happens when that fresh server feel is gone and it doesn't exist anymore. That's my concerns. And that's where most of my feedback is going to be coming from. Yeah, the mentor system is a huge boon. And honestly, I'm really looking forward to the mentor system, because honestly, I don't see a whole lot of games doing it correctly, where it doesn't feel worthwhile for the mentor to do it, and doesn't feel like great getting boosted by like other players or whatever. So if the mentor system is done well, then that can clear a lot of concerns that I have. for the longevity of Ashes of Creation.
I mean, I think ultimately, like, there's just people that want to shape Ashes into what they want. And this is your game, Steven. You can do whatever you want, right? So I think ultimately, like, if I'm spending millions of dollars of my own money, I'm going to make what I want. You know what I mean? But at the same time, I really appreciate the fact that you are so open and, you do allow the flexibility for certain systems to be altered, but not completely remade, and changed completely.
I mean, to be clear, like, when you talk about I'm going to make the game I want, I agree. But however, my approach that I've taken has been one of, hey, come and make it with me. Right. And that's the reason why we do this. Right?
Exactly.
So to a degree, I am inviting that level of collaboration, that level of feedback from the community. The only difference is I know who my core audience is. And it's those individuals who understand the intent, who understand the philosophy, who agree with that philosophy, right? That are going to best have their expectations managed because they know what the end goal is for PvX.
You even see my comment here, like, it's like literally, because I caught snippets of this. I said such a great opportunity to collaborate with the devs and making a game that we all want. It's really special for, like, as much of the actual concerns of, like, being able to, like, oh, people are going to view this bad because we're in open development or whatever. There really is a great opportunity with us being able to collaborate and work on a game towards a direction that we like to play. And that's part of the reason why I backed it, is because I get to give my feedback and it be acted upon. And Intrepid has gained my trust so far with this to be able to come back at me and say, what did you not like? Could you explain further? Etc., etc. Like, the devs are actually really passionate about what they do from all my interactions with them. They just want to make the game that's better, and they know certain things are scuffed. Like, they are very human. Let me put it this way. Whenever you talk to a dev, they are very, very human, and being able to think about things in a wider scope, they'll be like, didn't think about, like, this issue. Thanks for pointing that out. Or, like, we don't really want to go that direction because X and Y. And so, like, there is benefit to, like, having these communications. And the big thing with the feedback that we're giving is that it is a large scope of so many systems that interweave with each other. So even though they may not act upon your feedback, it's most likely because of something that's happening with a different system, like on the other side. So your feedback may not be put into the game, but it is at least listened to and thought about, and I can say that much. And yeah, exactly what you said. It's like, it's going to fix the overall health of the game long term and save, like, a lot of problems after launch, because we as gamers, we do weird, stupid shit, and we test a lot of things that QA testing just straight up does not get to. So there's nothing that QA can do to fix everything. And so when we find these, like, weird niche cases of certain interactions, they're like, oh shit, thanks. So that, I think that's really cool.
And for dynamic world.
Right.
It's when you have a broader audience and you have people who may not be as familiar with that intent, and they come in and they say, no, change this.
Right.
Well, that's not why we're building the game. And so it just takes a little bit of diligence on the side of the content creators, on the continued diligence of the company. That interaction continues to occur where we say, no, this is our goal, this is our intent, and we will continue to work towards that end.
Right. Well, this might be a very super straightforward question, but there's like 20, isn't there 22 biomes in total right now?
I think that's artisan professions.
I always get confused with professions and biomes. There's a lot of biomes, Steven.
Biomes, I believe there are 18.
18. Okay. Will we test every single biome before Alpha 2 is finished as testers?
Yes. Yeah. Alpha, because technically Alpha 2 will continue to run until launch.
Right.
So, Yeah, so absolutely. And you know what we talked about was that when betas begin, they will begin concurrently alongside as the Alpha 2 servers continue, right?
Okay.
So um, everything will be tested as part of Alpha 2 because Alpha 2 continues to run until launch.
Okay. The kind of follow-up to that, because there was a lot of people that were thinking we're not going to test every facet of this game, and there was going to be maybe
I'm one of those people.
Steven and the team are probably going to leave some things up to, like, discovery whenever the actual launch day happens or whatever, or they might hire like a professional testing house to test certain systems.
We have multiple professional testing houses. We have two contracted QA testing houses that we work with, one in Europe and
yeah,
one in Mexico.
They've stated this before.
And then we have our internal QA teams that are, a dozen strong right now as well. So, there are many QA testers that we use on the project, 100%.
Yeah.
And those are where we, obviously have more granular test reports from, where we have very specific required QA, analyses that are done and submit.
Yo, what's up, Pally? How's it going?
As that goes back to our developers.
Right.
You're up late.
That is a different testing apparatus than what we expect from our community.
Okay. That's honestly really, really good to hear. The thing is that one of the things that I wouldn't say worried, but when Alpha 2 starts, we're going to get 3 days to play, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. We really don't know exactly, if it's going to be like 24/7, like as soon as Thursday midnight happens, we can go in on Friday, or if there's going to be a certain time or whatever. But
does he answer this? This would be huge.
Tools. This is very split. I've talked to a lot of Discord.
Ask the question.
And
I want to know.
I'm a fan of tools as a player, especially when I have very limited time to test.
Your mom let you stay up. I love that.
Players be given tools at the start of the Alpha 2 to either level more quickly, have like a vendor with all the profession recipes, gatherables, to test what they want to test. Like if they don't want to go out and quest or do something and they're like, hey, I'm all about professions, I just want to get feedback on professions, I can stay in town and do that.
Classic Steven.
Something like that, like on a separate server that's more of a testing server and have a more natural play the game as intended kind of.
To be fair, Vlhadus just threw like a fucking
we will have sessions
buttload of stuff towards him
around particular systems, and that we offer shortcuts of ease in order to interact with that system as intended. That would be done on our public test realm. We actually just stood up this last week our public test realm in addition to the Alpha 2 test realms. And the reason for that is to do what you just described, is to test specific specific things that we don't want.
Yeah, so public test realm is basically like for normal development, what public test realm does, like even like League of Legends has like the PvE, like they bring on things that are going to be going into the live production server, but it's either not balanced, not all the tooltips are ready or something like that for it, or they need to test like a specific system, like for League of Legends, for example, if they need to like test out minion speed changes, they like want to see how it affects the game. And it's not just the PvE, but like Riot has their own testing studio in a singular location. I don't remember where. LS talked about it, but they have their own like testing studio for like new champions and stuff like that. And then the PvE would be more like the PTR. So you have like the development test realm, and then you have like the production test realm, and then you have live production. So like the PTR is like the stuff that they've already created in the background, and they're like, okay, test this out for us, or like go do this quest and see if this quest works. Go test like this crafting. Does this crafting work? And like they'll give you enough tools to test the concept of that system, and then like they'll get the feedback, they'll get the logs, they'll get the data, and then they'll kind of like fix it so that when it comes out to live servers, everything's resolved.
To sully the data that we collect from normal progression on the Alpha 2 realms.
Oh, that's a good point too.
So for example, over this weekend, we had a lot of the testers focused on the PTR, and that is where we know that wipe is going to occur because of that.
Awesome. Awesome. So I have, I got to talk about Node, Steven, because that was the key feature that sold me to this game. Like, honestly, playing World of Warcraft for almost 17 years and doing that whole mouse wheel, I'm wanting something different. And the Node system just in itself provides a completely different gameplay experience. And then when you guys actually went from 103 nodes to 85 nodes and then actually increased the world, like one of the questions I had was regarding.
I'm looking back at like Alpha 1, and Alpha 1 we were allowed to like go out and roam around and stuff too. So I think with Alpha 1 and how they let us do that, I can't imagine Alpha 2 would be too much different, because like we had Asmongold, like Griffin, and he was flying and stuff. There's a few other streamers, I think like Bustin had one too. And there was stuff that they did, like we went out and we went and killed the very, very early version of Firebrand and whatnot as like a group. But for the most part, we were allowed to go around the world and do whatever we want. And that actually provides like a really reliable feedback and data gathering for them. So player behavior is something that people want to figure out. Like, what do players do? What do they gravitate towards? So, like, if you are in the group of players that only go to this one thing, do this one quest because it's the best quest, that gives the heat mapped data that Intrepid gathers and are like, hey, look, players are just doing this thing because it's obviously the most broken thing in the game right now. We have to figure out a way to spread the players out and go do other things in the world. So I think that's a good way for like Alpha 2 like to progress, is like you're not just getting the best items and the best vendors and like from the vendors and then like testing all like certain things. I think players need to go out into the open world and actually like explore things so that they can get player behavior data.
Metropolises, because y'all actually increased the world size, has the size of the metropolis been increased as well to account for the decrease in nodes, or are they going to be the same?
The intended size for metropolises hasn't changed. So
Okay.
to give you an idea,
I'm sure they're still huge.
Yeah. No. They're very large, but they're intended to be very large. But the node system functions on a part of the world terrain that we essentially utilize that's a plug, right? And the reason why it's a plug in the terrain is because that we change aspects of that terrain as the node advances. And so that plug has a defined size, right? And it's essentially a 1 kilometer by 1 kilometer space. So anything that's going to progress within the node proper is going to exist within that plug. Now,
that's interesting.
That's talking about city layout. There are obviously components of a metropolis, or of a city for that matter, that can spawn off of the plug. Those can be small outposts. Those can be little NPC havens. Those can be hooks within narrative systems that live surrounding the node as well.
Right.
So not everything has to live on the plug per se, but that space is not going to get larger for the node proper than that 1K by 1K space.
Okay. That's actually pretty interesting that he like mentions that, because like you get to, that allows the devs to take this space, and as it progresses and levels up, they're allowed to just say, hey, blend this. Would it be an object? Like an Unreal Engine object, and then just kind of replace that object with all the things that are attached to that object. So it's actually a really easy way to scale. I think that comes into the question with like, is it going to be like New World where every city is the same? And they've said previously that no, not every city is going to be the same. And I know for like Alpha 2, all the nodes are going to be scientific at first, and with like different policies of all like the military node, the economic node, the religion node, So you have different mayoral policies and commissions that you can do, but they're all going to be scientific at first. I would imagine like node plugs might be similar, where we might be seeing the same node layout over and over again, but in the background they're working on different layouts for different areas and different sections.
All right, this next question, I had so many people like whisper me, and I had these questions submitted a long time ago, but I still have people asking me the same question. And it's a very straightforward question. When will we get a look at the Rogue, Steven? People really want, like, when is the Rogue showcase, basically?
Oh, showcase.
I will say, obviously keeping in mind that as we moved into this testing phase, a few months ago and started bringing in the A1 testers to be a part of the pre-A2 testing, we had plans that were essentially to continue, development towards the Rogue archetype. Mm-hmm. However, we had to stay agile and switch those plans over to focusing on what we are testing, as we said, test and react almost on a daily basis now, where we're hot fixing. And that the PC team has...
Yeah, because they're in crunch time, basically, so, right?
The development for the Rogue is currently been put on hold. We still intend to have it be released as part of the phases that we discussed prior, which I believe the Rogue is planned for phase two.
Probably not at the launch of phase 2, though, correct?
Yeah, it'll probably... I would imagine it's going to be short.
Have a good night, Pally. Thanks for coming, dude.
Okay.
But that development will continue once we are out of this kind of hot fix test and react phase.
Okay. Well, okay. Now that I've asked that question, I'll go back to my node stuff. Basically, like superpowers. We haven't really got a lot of. We got like little, like, this is going to be a superpower for a tier 6 node here and there, but are there going to be more superpowers to choose from when it comes to metropolises? Because I feel like having one option as a mayor, like you hit the tier 6 metropolis, and then, oh, well, we're just going to get this one perk. I think it would be really cool as a mayor if we actually had multiple options for superpowers. So that way, even 2 divine nodes or 2 like economy nodes can actually have completely different sets. So as a citizen,
you actually completely. What is a? I need superpower. An ultimate ability that becomes unlocked when the node reaches Metropolis stage. Superpower is applied to the vassal nodes of each Metropolis. Mega Catacomb. This is like the blimp, like the teleportation or the fast travel between scientific nodes. That kind of stuff, right? So, and then like the auction house marketing, like throughout everything. Those seem pretty strong. Seem pretty overarching. I don't know if I'd want 2, or like you want to choose from like multiple if you're the mayor of the metropolis. I don't know. I'd have to think about it.
That'd be very appealing.
Yeah, I mean, the superpower is meant to be additive, meaning that like if multiple metropolises are stood up with a particular node type, that
did bro just read the wiki? He's basically saying the same shit. Dude, Steven knows his game, let me tell you.
That the superpower, which would have been just delegated to the vassal structure of one metropolis, now can incorporate an entirely second vassal structure or multiple vassal structures.
Bro is reciting. Does he just read?
So as it's
the added power is meant to be additive, meaning that like if multiple metropolises.
Oh wait, no.
With
this is probably from. I forgot that the wiki gets added.
Type, that
I was like, wait a minute. I'm fucking stupid, man. I'm retarded. I'm sorry.
That the superpower, which would have been just
he's a bot.
to
He's so consistent. It's not like the wiki just took exactly what he said from this 1v1 podcast and put it on the wiki. Good job, Lex. I'm sorry, dude.
Which influences a majority.
Good job, Lex.
Right. So to keep that in mind, that's one thing. Second part of your question, which is like, these strong, powerful interactions that a metropolis can exert over the world. They're not just housed within the superpower ability. They're also housed within policies. They're also housed within the types of building types. Like all of these are node specializations that influence the world and players interact with the world.
Right.
I'm not sure that it makes sense for us to take what you just described and put that into the superpower system. I think that what you just described lives within the policy and within the relationships, the node relationship systems. Like there is room for those places to have powers that get exerted and are chosen amongst a number of different options for the leadership team of the node that you're talking about.
So that you just kind of said, I mean, you're almost making it sound like these policies actually have pretty good amount of power. Because I think there's a lot of people that feel like it's going to be very cookie cutter. And we haven't seen it. So it's like we only can imply what's on paper. So, that's what I just wanted to ask.
Yeah, no. I mean, again, we discussed what is the intent behind the policy system. The intent is that there are varying degrees of influence that are very powerful, depending on the policy that we're talking about, depending on the mandates that the mayors exert in order to utilize those policies. So yeah, I mean, that is a space where I feel we can service that desire of influence over the realm.
I mean, I would say one superpower, Steven, that would actually save a lot of time for the development team and would be so freaking cool for players is to have the divine superpower to summon one of the 9 gods as like a 24-hour cooldown. How
24 hours
to summon a god?
You need like a month cooldown on that shit.
Summon a god.
Once per mayor election.
Can you summon a god? I mean,
you could ask. I mean, it doesn't mean they're going to do it.
Yeah, excuse me.
Can you come and help us real quick in this castle siege?
Mr. Shaw,
for a moment, please. That'd be great.
Shaw, can you come help?
Oh my god. Okay, so you guys just went over the whole starting experience, and believe me, that's something I am extremely passionate about. Is the starting experience of an MMO is pivotal to people sustaining and just keeping and playing that MMO. So kind of a question I have for these node starting experiences is safe spaces. And I know that word could be taboo in the community, but I don't care. I'm going to say it.
Vlhadus actually asked this in his Discord, and I was kind of talking about my time in Tibia, where it's a full loot, full PvP game. And so basically they would have certain areas where you wouldn't be able to attack other players. It would just be not possible. And like, to put it in like Ash's terminology, if you were corrupted, you wouldn't be able to go into these like safe zones. And the safe zones would be a temple. It would be like a church. It would be like the bank area which is called the depot. And the reason for that is because there was a very early version of Tibia where there were no safe zones, much like Ashes of Creation is right now. And people would wait for people to come back from like hunting or whatever, and then they would kill them right outside the bank. And then while they're getting respawned in the temple, they're looting their body and putting it inside the bank so that the other player can't come back and get their stuff. So there's definitive reasons why you create a safe zone. And that was the mechanic that was being abused in Tibia. While, like in Ashes of Creation, does something like that need to exist with their systems? I think is a good question to ask. I still think there should be safe zones, and I'm a PvP person, for like churches, for like weddings, temples for like respawn points, if there is temples for respawn points, or at least like enough safe, like in nodes, I should say, there should be like a spot in a node where there should be a safe zone. But out in the open world where there's a spawn point, probably not. I probably don't care. That's another interesting question to ask, like the community too. Like, do you want spawn points out in the world, or do you want like a spawn point right outside of a dungeon? Do you want a spawn point to just go all the way back to your node and you want to make the travel all the way there? That could be interesting gameplay design considering how big Vera is. Like, if you're in your node and that's where you spawn every time you die, you really have to be careful before you go out. And like, how far does localization go for you then? Like, how do caravan runs happen at that point then? Do caravan runs operate differently? So when we're like talking about feedback and stuff as well, there's a lot of systems that can be interacted with and changed if you change one simple thing. So that's one good example of the feedback thing that we were talking about earlier.
Safeguards, at least in the initial cathedral or starting area, that people don't have to go and log in minute 1, second 1 and engage in PvP. That people can actually like set up their UIs or, you know, get their bearings first, click a couple of buttons. You know what I mean? Like
yeah.
Is there anything like that planned or even intended?
Well, again, the intention there is that we do protect players at the onset of.
Also, the other thing, like the onset of the game, if you log into Vera, or you come into Vera with your character and you just immediately start killing people, hopefully, if you're one of those people, you don't attack back, and that person gains corruption, and that corruption is going to be hell for them, and it's meant to be hell. It is an anti-grief mechanic. So I think corruption is another way that Ashes of Creation uses to stop players from doing this, even without safe zones. So I mean, like, you have to think about these things as well when you talk about like adding certain mechanics and stuff in.
Their experience from immediately potentially having any type of griefing encounter or PK system, whether or not that's surfaced through a level gate, whether or not that's surfaced through areas that have PvP suppression zones like the starting zone. I think that's still up for discussion. Right now, we have the ability to flag areas that are PvP available versus PvP not available. We're utilizing that obviously for the tropics and the desert biomes within the start of A2 on October 25th. You may see that in Lionhold and in the starting portal area, there is PvP suppressed there.
Okay, so that's basically a safe zone.
That might get moved on to a level predicated system.
So feedback, you want feedback on that if that feels good as a player?
Absolutely. But as it relates to...
Yeah, no. Max level, I wouldn't save them. But it would increase their corruption like tenfold. And their XP debt, what they can lose and stuff like that. So there's going to be a lot of things that corruption does that like will create a really bad consequence for them doing that. Yeah, they can be a dick. They're max level. They can kill a bunch of people. That is also one of my big concerns with corruption in its current state as well, where like once you're max level, I don't care about XP debt. And if I'm even max level and I have like wood gear on, then like I don't care about those items that I drop either. So like there are some cases where that's bad, especially when you're max level, and I think that's where most of my concern is for corruption at the moment. Is what happens at max level. Nobody cares if they drop lower tier gear while they're griefing other players. And that's going to be something that we have to like give feedback on, that Intrepid's going to have to look at. But it's hard when we can't even get to level 25 and they're focusing on other things right now. So that's something that we'll have to talk about when we get there. So yeah, I mean, it's really hard to kind of like say that, because there was a one point where in Tibia it really didn't matter. Like you could have like Amulet of Losses and stuff like that, but it, like unless you had like corruption, if you had corruption, then your amulet of loss would not work. What's up, Elamoto? What's up, Big Hoss? So yeah, the lifetime PK value has to mean something. I'm also not a big fan of max level in MMOs. I really like the idea of character progression and not base level progression. That was something that Dr. Burns and I talked about on my little podcast with him. And yeah, I'm just not a big fan of this level 50 is max level type of thing. Like I care more about character progression. I care more about like what I can do with my character. Crafting and stuff like that would be really cool to be as like a form of like character progression. Weapon skills is a form of character progression. There's all these other things that you can do that I don't think base level really fits the MMO genre. And that's my personal opinion. I know like people are really, and there's reasons to do like, oh, this item is level gated for level 10 players, or this item is like gated for like level 20 players, because there can be like abuse and stuff like that happens with that. Then there's also like base stats that could be base stats are just really easy to scale linearly with how you progress, and allows you to take on harder and more challenging content without making things trivial. There's a lot of things that go behind this thing. But yeah, I'm just not a big fan of maxing a level in an MMO. It feels counterintuitive to me, because in life you're constantly growing, right? So like you're always becoming a better person or doing things, and yeah, you might peak at one point or something like that, but you can still continue to gain experience and stuff. So I wonder I wonder what like a system that's not based off of like the max leveling system. And that's also where like end game comes in, like end game content. And yeah, I hate the idea that there's end game content and regular game content, and I think a lot of MMORPG players agree with that sentiment. So yeah, I don't know. I really don't know. It could go a bunch of ways, but that's probably my like. That's how I feel about leveling and progression.
Nodes and those towns, they are populated with guards. The guards are very strong. We had a bug last week where guards weren't responding actively to corrupt players. We are addressing that this week, so that should be fixed. But
wait, what did you say?
Very strong. We had a bug last week where guards weren't responding actively to corrupt players. We are addressing that this week, so that should be fixed. But
okay,
those
patch
guards
notes
should be able to handle any potential griefers that might be participating at the node proper level.
Okay. I mean, this is I think a very
and any feedback I give, like I'm totally down. Like if Intrepid change it or tune it to whatever fits their game the best, I like that.
ZOI.
Can there be more than one metro in a castle ZOI?
No. There could be more than one metro in a castle ZOI. And so first of all, castles don't have ZOIs. Yeah, castles don't have ZOIs. Castles have economic regions.
Okay. Well, there's only going to be 5, right?
Right.
That's insane.
And let me just make sure.
Is there 5 or 15?
Make sure I'm accurately answering your question.
I think it's 5.
So we have 2 different region systems. We have the zone of influence, which is a static grid that lives atop the map.
Right.
Within each zone of influence, there is only.
I think he said that the guards are really, really strong.
I would re-ask your question in a different way. Can there be multiple metropolises within a castle's economic region?
Right.
Because the economic region consists of multiple zones of influence and many different nodes. And it's possible that the way nodes develop when they start advancing within the node hierarchy, that you could have a tale of 2 cities, twin cities, really that are kind of almost adjacent to each other, but have expanded in opposite directions. And as a result, they both become metropolises. So you could have 2 metropolises in very close proximity. Now, what this does is it creates an interesting game where some castles are worth more than other castles.
Oh shit!
That's so cool.
That's awesome.
Oh shit!
Cool, I think. Wow. So because castles exert tax pressure over nodes within their economic region. And if you had two metropolises within the economic region, boy, would that castle be making a shit ton of money.
Right? Oh my god, that's I thought it was gonna be like, oh no,
guilds are
that was gonna be the end of that.
Definitely gonna be targets then.
Really great answer. Holy crap. So
wait, that's so crazy.
And this is another thing that I'm kind of worried about too, Steven. And with you guys utilizing,
I like that,
and kind of inventing this dynamic gridding system that you guys showcased a little while ago. I'm worried about starting experiences having a single point spawn. And what I mean by that is whenever you create a character, everybody that makes a KLR or whatever, they're all going to spawn on this single point. And World of Warcraft does this. A lot of MMOs do this. Are you guys going to try to take advantage potentially of the dynamic gridding system and having potentially like a grid? So instead of everybody spawning in one singular point where they can cause like a server crash, that you could actually dynamically spread it out a bit? Or will you guys potentially want to take advantage of sharding? I know that's also a taboo word, but I think having a better starting experience is more crucial than just, oh, we're going to have it all on one server. Yeah. At least at the starting
level. I would break that question down a little bit, right? Because obviously the crux of your question is, how do we preserve the starting experience? Because I mean that is basically the problem statement. Hey,
yes,
my starting experience in other MMOs is inundated with connectivity issues, with lag, with rendering issues, with not being able to kill number of spawns in my introductory quests, like whatever that is. Now we have some intended solutions that aren't yet all online. Okay. However, the way that we've architected our back end is in a way where we can custom define certain replication values within zones that we define. Now, one of those zones that's going to be obviously very important are the starting zones. And there are 4 intended starting zones for the map. And in order to satisfy the way that player movement throughout the world is going to be different and unique, we don't want a cookie cutter approach so that we simulate the same node progression across all realms, right? We want it to be something that is unique per realm. And in order to achieve that, what we do is we bifurcate immediately the player movement, and we do that through certain narrative systems. We have multiple forward operating bases, 2 per starting location. So, for example, in the Riverlands, we have Samia's Hope, which isn't quite yet finished construction yet on, and we have Lionhold for the Kalar and the...
Wait, what? That's new. Wait, what?
Starting location. So, for example, in the Riverlands, we have Samia's Hope, which isn't quite yet finished construction yet on, and we have Lionhold for the Kalar and the Valoon.
Right.
So immediately.
Oh, wait, there's 2 starting zones for the humans, elves, orcs, and dwarves? I thought there was only 4 starting portals. That's fucking sick.
In different directions.
So there's 8 portals?
On race, on...
I think that's new information.
Narrative systems, on kill quests. Like there are a number of things that start to bifurcate the player base. Now, when we talk about performance, as I said, we have certain approaches on the back end that we can custom define how many replicated clients there are within a region. We can custom define the respawn rate of certain spawners within that region that are predicated on like number of available monsters.
1 portal, but 2 starting hubs. I think the portals are the hubs.
But I don't think dynamic gridding would come into play to solve the problem you're describing. What dynamic gridding allows us to do is, as that starting area is high in population, we can dial down the governance or the authority space that a particular grid worker or server worker has authority over, so that we're balancing the load of that high population across multiple workers. And then as those populations move out through the world, that grid starts to dynamically retract. So that's the intended approach.
That is awesome. I mean, again, I think the fear for any player, right, is like, you log in after you try to go into the enter world, and you just did like a 3-hour queue to then have a server crash because there's like 3,000 people in your starting area, right? I think that's the main fear for a lot of people.
And let me set expectations. It is entirely possible that that's going to happen quite often on October 20th.
It is going to happen, Steven. It is going to it's a precedent.
So let me just say, again, alpha, we are testing these things. We have our intended design. We have the way
that's a good thing to note
to solve this. Now
Right.
I
have a fucking.
We need to flesh it out. We need to address the bugs, and that's
Steven
what
said.
This experience is part of doing.
Okay. Well, I want to go into talking a little bit about the bounty hunter system. This is a system that I also am really freaking excited about.
I mean, this is also one of those things that we were talking about with like the corruption stuff. Is like the bounty hunter system in itself is a way for players that are max level to feel danger as well. They will be put on like the bounty hunter boards, and players will be able to interact. So the bounty hunter system is a possible solution, or a singular possible solution that may help like max level corrupted players meet their judgment. But I'm skeptical on that. So I guess we'll see. We'll see.
I think the military node still needs a little bit more oomph comparatively to the other things that I know
superpowers.
That's going to come probably in phase 3. But the bounty hunter system, has it undergone any changes or any kind of things that we don't know of, or have y'all put the bounty system on hold as far as like iterative process or design?
Yeah, the bounty hunter system isn't fully implemented yet.
Okay.
And you know, generally the way we approach implementation is,
yeah, I agree.
We have our original design, we stick with that, and then we iterate once it's fully implemented and we're able to collect feedback and testing on it. So the bounty hunter system, as it has been described, is still the intent in implementation. Part of that system is up, and part of that system has been stood up, but it isn't fully fleshed out or released yet.
Okay. And so
yeah, so they don't know either. Is basically what that says. Yeah, we don't know either.
Like
we're gonna try. We'll figure it out.
When you die, it seems very punishing to someone like me.
Good.
Super punishing. Yeah,
it's an anti-grief mechanic.
So that's another core philosophy tenet, right? Risk versus reward.
Being a masochist, is that weird?
No. It's when you fail, you feel failure.
Oh,
because a lot of games you fail and you don't feel shit. It's like, oh, you failed. Okay.
I love Steven's candidness.
Here's your trophy.
I mean, that's true. And I kind of like I've been coming around a little bit towards the death penalties because people always talk about the Zerg thing that happened in a lot of other games. But if you're constantly throwing yourself at a world boss and you have so much, like you're going to have to leave, like your whole group's going to have to go. And I think that causes you not to be at the world boss for 5 hours, you know what I mean? Like, and I think that also leaves other groups a chance to get that. So, but the question I have about death penalties is quite simple. Like, so when you die, is it a timer? So when you die and you get like a little bit of XP debt or whatever, is it like a 10-minute timer that has to wear out, or is it like a permanent thing until you have to do something? Like, I'm just curious as to.
There are 3 primary consequences for dying.
Okay.
Right. And obviously the way you die can influence the balance of those 3 consequences. First and foremost is you have a death debuff. That lasts for, anywhere from 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how often you've died.
Okay.
Okay. That death debuff is
gliding mounts are going to be pretty meta, I think.
It's going to influence you.
And also the stat dampening is there's an ad going right now, but I'm just going to go ahead and pause it and kind of talk anyways. So the stat dampening only affects people that are non-combatants. So if they are green players, you are going to receive stat dampening as a corrupted player, and that will only affect non-combatants. So if you are actively trying to grief people, the stat dampening matters. If you are going to be, I think this was like my concern during Alpha 1. I was like, well, corruption is going to be really punishing if like you're trying to protect yourself and you have 20% stat dampening. And I don't know if they said anything anywhere else, but afterwards I noticed like the wiki was saying, that it only affects non-combatants. And so that to me is a much better solution, because you are able to effectively get out into the world, and you are going to be able to defend yourself from other players if you're corrupted. You're not going to have stat dampening against people that are purple. You're not going to have stat dampening that are against people that are red, and you're not going to have stat dampening against like mobs and creatures out in the world. So you're going to be relatively safe for at least doing that. So stat dampening seems extremely punishing until you realize that it's only punishing for people that are trying to grief, and not necessarily punishing for people that aren't griefing, you know? So if you go red just because you're fighting over a farm spot and they don't attack back, that's fine, because when they come back and they start attacking again and they're purple, then you're not in a worse situation. Like, you can still keep fighting and keep grinding, and eventually with the experience that you gain either from killing them while they're purple, because I noticed that in the Node Wars people were still getting experience for PvP, and then being able to work off corruption by killing mobs naturally and stuff like that. Kind of like the soul mechanic in Tibia, where like you can't just keep creating runes, you have to actually go out and go hunt things. So I imagine that's kind of like how corruption works. I think that's a good way to kind of just like effectively say that stat dampening isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world. I think where they have it right now, from what's been said on the wiki and other things, is probably a pretty good spot for it right now. So it is meant to be punishing. I'm only halfway through the Vlhadus one. I haven't listened to the yokai one. So that's going to be next. But so far, this is a great interview. Vlhadus is asking a lot of great questions.
The second thing that you have that happens to you is you acquire experience debt, right? And experience debt is something that lives on your progression tracker, right? This is experience debt that you need to go and gain experience in order to recover.
That's another thing. In Tibia, you actually lost levels, lost skills.
The more impact
in Ashes,
stat dampening
you just have debt.
your efficacy in battle. And this is efficacy in battle with PvP or PvE. It doesn't matter. Now, the ceiling for that is if you
wait, what?
100%
XP debt
on your efficacy in battle. And this is efficacy in battle with PvP or PvE. It doesn't matter. Now, the ceiling for that is if you accrue 100% experience debt within a level, you're going to have to work off that 100% experience debt.
Am I too loud?
You will have 20%, roughly 20% max ceiling on like how much your efficacy is curved.
Okay.
The third thing that happens on death is that you drop your parts of your material inventory, right? A percentage of your material inventory. Now, you could drop potentially completed items if you're corrupt when you die.
Nice.
Right? So it depends
Perfect.
kind of the state in which you're dying. If you are flagged when you die, if you're participating in PvP, you will suffer less consequences across the board for those three things.
Okay.
Wait,
can you? The way he worded that, it might be exploitable. So wait, hold on. I'm trying to think of, like, if you switch your flag status prior to death to get less XP without having to turn purple and also making them corrupt. Or if when you take damage while flagged, you turn purple. That's something I could test, I guess.
To encourage players to fight back, essentially, to engage in the PvP. Now, if you don't fight back, obviously, and we're talking about flagging system. Now, if you're in an opt-in PvP event, you are experiencing much less.
I didn't mean to put you to sleep, Korean.
Experience debt, if any at all.
Right.
But you are still experiencing dropped resources and the death penalty debuff.
So why do you hate PvErs? what do you have to make it so hard for PvErs? Like, I mean, I coming from a stance of a PvEer myself. I've dabbled in PvP and other MMOs. Like,
Sure.
Is it because you want the feeling of PvE to actually have, like, you want it to matter? Because
Well,
again,
here, let me ask this question. In what way do you feel that PvEers are hated?
there's more things for PvPers to do than PvE.
In what way?
Well, there's like for dungeons, like there's like instance content, right? We don't know if those instance content is going to be repeatable, right? There's not instance.
Some of those instance content are PvP as well. Some are PvE, right?
Okay.
That's the intent behind the system. There's going to be an equitable divide because we're PvX, right?
Right.
But is it because to get to the crux of the question,
No.
when you say why do you hate PvEers, what is it about the death penalties that I talked about that you or the audience feels is specifically against PvEers?
I mean, there's a death penalty. I hope you remove this, Steven, but there was one where
the death penalty is equitable, right? Like,
right.
If you're going to experience PvE content and that PvE content is difficult, or it's a puzzle, or you use the wrong ability at the wrong time.
I love that Steven's like defending his position, and he's not just like taking a PR stance.
Didn't effectively heal
like he's like actively saying like throwing hands.
Deserve a failure response.
Absolutely.
Right? Now, yeah, and failure shouldn't always be fun. It's the bite of failure that makes you motivated to improve, that makes you motivated to want to achieve a thing, right?
I mean,
if it was easy, then why would you do it?
No, for sure. I mean, there's that death penalty where I think it decreases drop rate by mobs. I hope y'all remove that because that's trash.
Yeah, he's like
like I don't
fight me, bro. Fight me.
Dampening the XP debt, and I think XP debt is still like, at least the people I talk to are super divided. They're like they don't know how that's going to feel or that's going to be. But yeah, I mean that's kind of the thing that I wanted to just ask, and that wasn't even a question. That was just something I just.
So like, I guess I'm gonna let him finish this real quick.
No, for sure. Yeah, no, I love it. I love that conversation point because, and this, again, it's talking to our core audience. Who is our core audience? Because the PvE players that don't want to exhibit this bite of failure, we might not be the game for you. The same is true for the PvP players. If you can just continually respawn and go back to battle and, no problem as a result of failure, then we might not be the game for you. The idea is that when you achieve a thing, you can feel proud in the achievement because you know what not achieving that would have resulted in.
Absolutely.
And it wouldn't have been good. Right. And that is something that I think a lot of people aspire to be challenged by. There is a certain group of people that don't give a shit about challenge, right? That just want to go, just
get good,
have an experience, and that's cool. There's a lot of games out there for them, but that's not our game.
Right,
we're not going to be an experience. So I guess I wanted to kind of like say, Steven's basically saying, Vlhadus made the point of there's more things to do for PvP than there are for PvE, and I don't necessarily I don't necessarily think that's true. Let me put it that way. There are a lot of things that PvP can fuck with PvEers. True. There's not a whole lot of interactions or things that PvEers can do to fuck with PvPers. So, and let's get this straight because I know this is a huge thing. PvP is a thing. PvE is a thing. And PvE is not just crafting and gathering. Like, crafting and gathering does not, it's not included in the PvE side of things, in my opinion. Yes, you are interacting with the environment, but you are interacting with the environment in a different way than you would be for what people mean by PvE, which is killing NPC mobs, essentially, where you are player versus AI. And you're not really player versus AI when you're like crafting or gathering or whatever. And so I don't think that there's a lot of interactions for PvErs to mess with PvPers. And I think that's where people see Ashes of Creation as a PvP game. And Steven is essentially saying you have room to do both. You go out in the world, you kill mobs, you level, you get gear, and that is the essential like system that you interact with when you are doing PvE content. When you are doing PvP content, yeah, you are doing caravans, you're doing node sieges, you're doing castle sieges. I'm going to assume that these aren't super common. People are definitely aware of open world PvP. There's all these certain things that like people do. So like PvPers could kill PvErs or crafters and gatherers and steal the shit that they're doing. Like the materials and whatnot that they have. But PvErs can't do anything against PvPers unless they PvP. And I think what Steven's trying to say is, yeah, that's kind of how the game is. Like that's how Ashes of Creation is going to be. Right? So they're going to attempt to put things that appease PvErs inside of systems, but like the whole node war thing where they had certain objectives like getting certain like rubies or something like that, and having that as an objective, that's not really PvE in my mind. Like that's not going to appease PvEers. Like you killing a highwayman as like an objective, or like the scholars or whatever as an objective, that's not PvE content. That's not even PvX content. What it is, it's a PvP game mode that you have certain objectives. Kind of like League of Legends, where it's a PvP game, but your objective is to kill towers, to get neutral monsters, to get dragon, to get baron. Like, it's a PvP game. Yeah, you can argue that it has PvE in it and it's a PvX game, but we all know that's not really the case, right? Like, so PvE is essentially raiding. It's essentially dungeon grinding. It's mob grinding. It's questing. It's those types of things. And as long as those systems are there, they're good. PvEers are pretty happy. But PvEers need to adjust to the PvX lifestyle, is what Steven's saying. So if you just enjoy PvE and you don't want to get any interaction from other players or be at risk, then Ashes of Creation is not made for you.
Let me ask this question real quick before I go.
Yeah, WoW is PvE.
The 20% instanced content. Because I know you kind of mentioned that.
WoW is the thing where like WoW actually separates PvE and PvP. You have PvP gear, you have PvE stuff. So like WoW is quite literally two separate things that players can interact with, and you even have fucking war mode that turns it on and off. WoW is a PvE game. All right. Thanks, Big Hoss. I'll see you later. Have a good night.
Going to be like a one-time story thing for the PvE side. I just find that to be like, why can't you create something that's more repeatable for people to go in and challenge themselves in just PvE without having to deal with PvP attached?
I actually think PvPers don't care. As a PvPer myself, I don't really care about having to do repairs or going out and doing PvE stuff. It's much easier to convince a PvPer to do PvE stuff for better gear, raiding, doing repairs, and stuff like that out in the open world than it is to teach a PvE player how to PvP. What's up, Ezekiel? How's it going? So that's another thing that I'm like, we quite literally, I mean, I talked to Vertec about all this stuff a lot, and me and him kind of disagree on this a lot, but essentially, like, Vertec likes PvPing, and he's kind of like defending the PvEer aspect of just, hey, these things aren't made for everybody. And Steven is right here just said, if that is your only intent, then Ashes of Creation is not for you. And that's that. Like, there's other games that you can go play, but Ashes of Creation is just not made for you. And you have to decide whether you can live with that or not. And that's the whole reason of like giving feedback that Ashes of Creation is not going to change discussion that they had earlier. Like, if you're not going to, like, sure, give feedback that will be beneficial to say, this PvE would be better if, this PvX scenario would be better if. But just saying, I need instanced rating for beyond just like story mode stuff. It might be available, it might not. PvE servers, obviously, no go. So there's a lot of these different things that Steven is just kind of like, this is the stance, this is how the game is, and if you don't like it, sorry. That's that.
Because there's people that, like, when you go into arena, right, and you're doing a PvP,
exactly,
you have to
Dresh,
simultaneously do PvE while you're doing arena, right?
Sure.
Like, so it's like, you know, I think there just wants to be a bone thrown to the PvErs that want to just focus on PvE without having
repeatable PvE content.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, look, I think there are going to be repeatable PvE content. I think that there is. I think that there's a lot of repeatable PvE content that's in the open world, so it is subject to PvX. We have events, right? Those events will recur that people can go participate in. But again, it's still under the threat of bad actors. Because one of our core designs, which you asked earlier about, what are the things that you're not going to change? Well, PvX is one of those things.
Right.
Yeah, so PvX is one of the things he's not going to change. Literally what I just said. Wednesday, I usually have D&D. So maybe. Put me as tentative on that. But I would love to. But I also don't want to skip out on D&D if I
trying to complete PvE
don't have to
content, or when you're trying to complete PvP content, the adverse can occur, meaning the PvE or the PvP content. Like that is something that that is
Wednesdays are a no-go
into the challenge rating, right? And the challenge rating is what we define as part of a particular encounter.
I'm down for another day for sure.
Challenge rating can be something that is PvP driven or PvE driven. If you're talking about repeatable content that is within,
I would never leave you out, Pookie.
Siloed within instances, I think there's going to be repeatable PvE content that is exclusive of PvP. That's okay. So there will just be PvE, because we also have arena systems that are instanced, which are just focused around PvP.
Exactly.
So that is in the spread there that we've talked about in the past is like an 80-20 spread. Right. 80% being open world driven, 20% being instance driven. And that's where we want to preserve certain story elements, right? That's where we want to define very curated number of participants, super rigid challenges that players have to
have a good night, Dresh. Thanks for coming, dude.
Solve, right? And so I think that is valid.
Yeah. No, I totally
which that is such a bomb, by the way. That is quite literally, I think, all that Vertec wanted, actually, for like his feedback, is he just wants a spot for like instance content. I know he has some gripes about like it only being story driven, but like that's the same thing for WoW. Like you do the story content for instance content, and that it's all story driven for the most part. I don't know about like WoW Classic, like I don't like Ragefire Chasm, was that really story driven? I don't know, maybe. But like, yeah, I guess it is kind of like story driven. I think it's all story driven. So any instance content, even in like WoW, is story driven. So I don't think there should be any like qualms about that. Per se, but I think Steven just kind of hit the nail on the head on basically everything that I noted that PvErs are wanting.
I mean, I think, you know, and I've talked to so many
in a PvX game.
Staunch PvErs, and there's always been this kind of debate where, you know, the PvPers want the game to be more PvP based, and there's the PvErs that want it to be more PvE based. And I think as long as there's a balance, I think that's ultimately, because I'm not playing the game, I don't know, right? I'm just speaking just off of what I know.
And you just described what the challenge is. The challenge is literally keeping a balance.
Yeah.
Because that is the problem of PvX, is that you are trying to find the middle ground between two very disparate communities.
Yeah.
However, here's the gamble. Here's the gamble when you talk about Ashes of Creation.
No.
The gamble is that there is actually a large community which is comfortable with those two disparate ideas existing together.
Right.
And that's what PvEx is.
Right. No, I get you. I mean, I get it. Like, I'm trying to advocate for the people that have talked to me about this. Like, ask Steven this and ask Steven that. You know, it is what it is. But next question. So, classes. I'm a huge class guy. I'm still trying to wrap my head around the
64 class talks. Let's go.
Now, augment system. People, we've discussed this, and I know that's not going to go online until phase 3, but I think the word flavor has been used a lot, and people want more than flavor. And I know this game has to release soon, you know, like, and when you're talking about completely transformed abilities, I don't mind if that comes later, because I think we need to have like at least a base of what these abilities in the augment system needs to do. But if there's something that comes down the road with patches or expansions that you actually want to make these abilities even more transformative, I'm cool with that. But I guess for you to answer, when it comes to the augment system, is it going to be flavor when it comes to the ability change? Like, oh, this frostbolt is now like a fireball, or, you know, like it's not going to feel impactful.
I think that I think there's a wide spread of how each ability has the potential to be augmented when we implement the augmentation system.
Right.
I think that even in the start of A2, without augments present, you can see the direction that some of the passives have influence over your abilities.
Like the base talent tree, right?
Exactly. Mm-hmm. We've shown that the way we've constructed in a modular way our ability system, we can drastically change an ability's effects. And we will translate that over to augmentation as well and dial it up. So it's not just flavor. It is fundamentally, the potential is that some of these abilities fundamentally change.
That's awesome.
However, it's also capable that some of its flavor changes, but that's left in the hands of the player. How do they want to either stray away from their original archetype, or how do they want to change some of the flavor of it? Like that is the customization effort that the player gets to have some agency over.
Yeah. I mean, again, just like when I talk to people, the class system, there's just a lot of people
I'm digesting.
That
I don't know
really just the 8
how I feel about that.
With, you know, if you're a predator, like you still feel like a rogue, you know what I mean? And I hope that, you know, the hope is with the augment system that it does make you feel.
Can we please change that fucking name?
Like a rogue. Like you can encompass that predator class, you know?
I think it's okay.
People were talking about fucking change the tank name. Can we change Predator? I don't want to be memed at for being a rogue ranger as a Predator, as a Jax main, you know? Like, please, if there's any name that we change out of all the classes, please change Predator.
Okay for people to be fearful of that, because when we talk about augments, all we can say right now is what our intent is. And our intent is to execute on it in a way where it doesn't just feel like 8 archetypes.
Right.
So,
perfect.
Whether or not
that's all I care about. That's literally all I care about.
Something people are going to have to wait and see. But
as long as it doesn't feel like 8 archetypes, I don't care.
It doesn't just feel like 8 archetypes.
That is my one qualm.
You know, the Firebrand.
I keep saying qualm, but I don't know if there's another word.
Steven.
My problem, concern, worry.
So freaking cool. Like y'all's team. Bravo to the team that made Firebrand and what he's been doing. Now, looking at Firebrand from Alpha 1, there was an attunement process you had to go through to get the flame ring. And I loved like just that whole like
rewind
tuning and getting that thing, because if you didn't have the ring, you just die when you go into the Firebrand area, right? Looking at the way the Firebrand was presented in this time, it didn't.
Class's intent for the 64 classes is to not make it feel like there are only 8 archetypes. They want whether they execute upon that or not is on us, but to like give feedback on. But that is their intent, is to not make sure that the 64 classes feel like 64 classes and not just 8 archetypes. Which is all I care about.
An attunement process per se. Now,
Correct.
my question is that are attunements still on the table, or has the team kind of shifted away from the attunement process? Because I think attunements can actually be a really good thing for world bosses, personally.
Yeah, attunements are a gatekeeping mechanism, right?
Yes, exactly.
They're a way to mitigate the potential PvX interaction that could interrupt your raid, right?
Right.
Because there is some level of effort that must be exerted by antagonists who would hope to interrupt your efforts.
Mhm.
Now, that was a specific narrative mechanic in A1. Is it possible that we will see those throughout the rest of the game? Absolutely, 100%. That is a valid design mechanic.
Love it.
Yes.
I love it. This could be a very simple question, but a lot of the RPers, including myself, I'm just curious because we know there's religion in this game, right?
Yeah.
What is the gameplay of religion? Like, how do you what is the actual gameplay that surrounds? Is it just quests? Is you just go and pray at a church?
I mean,
or
religion is definitely it intersects twofold, right? It intersects at the economy and it intersects at the narrative level.
Shay, I see you, Shay.
So religion is essentially it's a different flavor of social organization that players can join. This helps to create, again, because we're a non-faction based game. So we have to have a lot of mechanisms that create these pseudo factions that can kind of categorize players into different groups where friction is possible, where not everybody can be a winner across those religious systems, right? When we talk about a particular patron religion of a node or a certain...
I've heard of drain tanking. I've never heard of drain healing. Like, that's weird as fuck. That's weird. Oh my god. I feel like it would be bad. I feel like drain healing would just suck. Like, it doesn't... like, it's cool as a concept, but I don't think it would be good, like, mechanically. That's fucking hilarious, though.
Relics that can be acquired, or certain progression in title and rank for players that they can invest in. And that investment requires successful execution of certain narrative portions. And then upon doing so, now they have access to unique vendor tables that intersect with a slice of the economy that provide unique,
interesting,
areas where players can
kind of like an oh shit button
market because they progress to a certain level within the religion. So like that's the area where religion intersects.
Yeah, Gambit's sick.
Is that ability to create these pseudo factions that players can exert pressure over the economy, control over the economy because of their due diligence on the narrative systems.
That's awesome. I'm so glad you and your team are so MMO focused, because it feels like there's just so many companies that don't understand what gamers want. You know what I mean? And it
intersects at the narrative level.
Intersects.
So religion is
what the fuck, Steven?
It's a different flavor of social organization that players can join. This helps to create, again, because we're a non-faction based game. So we have to have a lot of mechanisms that create these pseudo factions that can kind of categorize players into different groups where friction is possible, where not everybody can be a winner across those religious systems, right? When we talk about...
So when he's talking about religious systems, social organizations, it's not just religion is one social organization. It's a way to, once again, divide the player base into different types of factions, where there's like a Resna religion, there's a Norland religion, there's a Shoal religion, there's an Eterna religion. So like all these different religions have different intersecting quests that you can go on that change the economy of the world. Am I understanding that correct? What? That's crazy to think about.
A particular patron religion of a node
What?
or certain relics that can be acquired, or certain progression in title and rank for players that they can invest in. And that investment requires successful execution of certain narrative portions. And then upon doing so, now they have access to unique vendor tables that intersect with a slice of the economy that provide unique.
That's something that like Swodar does, right? Like if you have like certain vendors that are like specific to your class or whatever, so that you have like better cosmetics or whatever. I kind of like that as like an idea for like religion and stuff too. So you can like go down a different social organization path. And I don't think religion is going to be the only social organization. There might be more social organizations as well. They mentioned like thieves guilds and stuff like that in the past, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, I think since Ashes of Creation has the writer from ESO, Elder Scrolls Online, that they will be able to pull off social organizations really well, because like social organizations in Elder Scrolls Online were probably the only thing that I thought were like really, really good. When it comes to like ESO, like the social organization storylines were more compelling to me than the actual main story quests. And since we have the writer from Elder Scrolls Online, I think Ashes of Creation is actually going to be able to make good of that system.
Areas where players can corner a market because they progress to a certain level within the religion. So like that's the area where religion intersects, is that ability to create these pseudo factions that players can exert pressure over the economy, control over the economy, because of their due diligence on the narrative systems.
That's a statement that is.
I'm so glad, like, you
crazy to unpack. By the way,
MMO focus, because it feels like there's just so many companies that don't understand what gamers want.
Like, there's probably so much loaded behind that statement.
Just how passionate you are, and just like I can't wait. Like, I'm so excited. So there's a heated debate going on in the forums. I don't know if you looked at it about.
I haven't looked at the forums in a long time, actually.
Now, there's been on the wiki, from what I looked, like anywhere between like from 4 to 6 hours. It was going to take like 70 days or something like that. Has that philosophy changed? Is the leveling process, because I don't know if you've played Classic WoW, but Classic WoW I thought had a very good earnable leveling experience, and that's without XP debt or any kind of failure mechanisms, truly. What is the team's stance on how fast leveling should be?
Well, I mean, as you would expect, we have a diverse set of opinions within the studio.
Lumberquack, 4 to 6 hours is way too fast. No, 4 to 6 hours per day for a total of 70 days would get you to max level.
About it as well.
Yeah, I'm sure.
My current approach in balancing leveling through 1 through 25 is a roughly 100 hours of gameplay. Is what it takes to get to level 25. Now, wow. that is not a linear curve, right? This is something obviously where we want to get.
God, I wish I could speak on that. I can't.
Quickly to let's say level 10 or level 15 or whatever, right? And then it starts to slow down.
Right.
My idea there might be a bit more on the grindy side. This is obviously subjective. But I think it ties in again to that
Jesus is correct
reward philosophy, right? We're spreading out also things that can contribute to leveling. It's not all just through grinding, right? There's quests, there's artisanship, there's gathering, there's PvP. Like those things all contribute to gaining progression experience. And there's a lot of different dials along the progression path that people have the ability to interact with, whether it be their weapon level progression or their, adventuring class progression or their artisanship level progression. There's areas where players are going to be distributing that focus. So yeah, I think it's something that we'll collect feedback on from the community as well.
All right, here's my feedback, Steven. I think you said it starts slowing down around 10 or level 10 or level 15, but with secondary archetypes not coming until level 25, I feel like that's not going to allow players to, like, if you're going to make it 100 hours before they can start playing the thing that they want to play as, I don't think that's very good. If you're going to make it that grindy, say cut it in half for being able to of like time played to become the class that you want with the abilities that you want to do. So if that means making it 50 hours for level 25 or making it level 15 for your secondary archetype, I think the secondary archetype needs to happen sooner rather than later. Even the halfway mark is kind of crazy. And then we can even extrapolate, like, from level 25 to 50 is probably going to be a lot harder for like exponential experience. So you're not looking at 200 hours for max level. You're probably looking closer to 300 to 500 hours played for like actual max level. So that's kind of crazy. I'm coming into an argument that Vlad and you talked about on your 1v1. What's that? What'd you have? Because yeah, I want to play my class. I don't want to play my archetype for like level 25. It's already been stated that max level should take 300 hours. Oh, okay. Well, my estimation was kind of on point then. Archetypes not being able to be accessed until level 25 should be sooner. I agree. Which side were you on, and which side was Vlad on? Because it sounds like you guys were on two opposing sides.
That makes me really, really excited. I'm just glad it's not going to be an 8-hour, oh, you're max level. And I think that's what people are used to in today's day and age. It's shit, in my opinion. I think my wife, being a brand new MMO player, like, we were leveling so quick in WoW.
And like, I'm fine with like a very, very long leveling experience. Don't get me wrong. I think I was talking to Flanker about this on Twitter. So yeah, exactly. I like level 10. I like the sooner that I can play my class, the better. Level 15, I would accept. But yeah, essentially, like, I should be by level 10 or like, Jesus, level 25 is 100 hours. And you get to level 10 relatively quickly. So I'm assuming that the leveling process slows down between level 10 and 15, and then slows down even further between 15 to 25. So yeah, I don't know, man. I think my point just stands is like, I want to play the thing, and I don't want to spend 100 hours of my time before I'm able to do the thing that I want to do. Right?
And she just couldn't understand her abilities.
You can make the max level,
and she's like,
I still be 300 hours. That's fine with me. I just want to play my class better or faster.
Like, having the slowed down effect really makes it feel earned. You know what I mean? And I think if you have that quality gameplay with it, it's just going to be special. Like, and I think that leveling should feel like a journey again, you know?
Agreed. Yeah, I agree 100%.
So, I have, let me see, probably one more question. And I'm really excited how you're going to answer this. And you've answered this question before, but I really wanted to kind of hammer this home because I think it's really important to the overall design and the kind of sanctity of Ashes. Most other gaming companies, when it comes to breaking TOS, just literally suspend players for buying third-party gold. When it comes to bodying the game knowingly or doing something stupid, can you confirm to players that Intrepid is going to take this heavy-handed approach and just permaban people that are knowingly doing shady crap?
Yeah. Well, I think this goes back to, part of why I started Intrepid.
Yeah.
However, the reason that part of the reason why I started Intrepid was by scummy monetization practices on the other side of that.
Absolutely.
But in part also it was because the games that I played in, you almost had to break the rules to stay competitive with everyone else because everyone was breaking the rules.
Exactly.
Right? All of the top players were allowed to break the rules. There was no enforcement, either because the company didn't want to
invest
or
or
mitigate their revenue or whatever reason that existed.
no.
It created a really toxic atmosphere of who can outdo the other side in essentially breaking the rules. Now, in that scenario, I would always win, of course. But wouldn't it be nice if there was some integrity?
He just fucking drops his wallet, dude.
That was
He's like, yo,
embraced by the.
I spent $60 million on making this game so far. What lengths do you think I fucking went to be the best in the game in a pay-to-win game? Fucking Steven, man. I love that.
Company and executed on by the company.
Yeah. Exactly.
And that is part of our
Oh my god,
which is, hey, what matters most in any MMO, whether you're a risk versus reward MMO, whether you're an everybody gets a trophy MMO, regardless of whatever the deal is that you protect the integrity of the player activity.
Yes.
And the player activity is what should be driving the in-game market, is what should be driving the in-game economy. Like, these things are paramount.
Well, that's the thing that like Steven just said is like he hates the fact that like the monetization practice is to make the game difficult so that you have to do that to be competitively viable. And that's shitty, which is why a lot of us are following Ashes of Creation.
That players feel
because they hate this
each day and exerting effort
thing that happens in our current state of games.
So
we're trying to reverse the MO.
We will be taking forward with us when we talk about how to enforce our rules. Right. And I think that even now we utilize that even during testing. Let's just say there have been some players which have been disinvited to the testing.
I think you're not going to get rid of sellers. My thing is you got to scare the shit out of buyers. If you scare the shit out of buyers, you starve the sellers. And I think buyers for the longest time felt no, like you said, just there was no fear because the company's not going to do it. If they do suspend me, it's for 3 days, 10 days. It's not too big of a deal. So they keep doing it.
I do think, first of all, agreed. But second is I think that there are ways that we have thought of that even other companies can if they're willing to invest the resources, which a lot of times, unfortunately, they're not.
GMs.
Exactly.
That you can stop sellers as well. And sometimes even easier than the buyers. So, because you got to remember, those sellers are all about efficiency.
Yeah.
And efficiency can be a trap.
Yeah.
Right? And it's a very easily learned trap that with the appropriate behavior heat mapping, you can pick up on relatively quickly.
Yeah. Whew. Well, honestly, like, do you mind just chatting for a couple minutes? Like, I asked all my questions. Yeah. I just honestly, what do you do, Steven, like to like mellow out? Like whenever you're done with your day, Ashes, get away from me. I just want to chill. Like, what are
There's a few good questions here.
Are you playing some D&D? Like, what are you doing just to chill, relax?
You know, that is a good question. I will say that that perhaps I have not been super good at chilling over the course of the last year.
Oh, come on. You got to rest, Steven. You got some R&R in you, man.
I will. Yeah. Well, there's a time to rest and a time to fight. Right now, it's fight mode.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
What I will say is, what are the things I enjoy doing? I mean, I like to game when I can, obviously. Right now, I play a little bit of Dota. That's
let's go.
Where I can let the rage flow, right? I'm like I'm all composed and happy and nice and civil at work. And then
you fucking piece of shit.
I'm like, let it flow forth.
Oh my god! I mean, I kind of.
I'd love to see Steven rage
because I being in crunch is not. I have a buddy of mine who's in gaming as well, and crunch is not a fun thing. You know what I mean? And I always, I know, like when I heard you talk about that, and I told my chat, I said, guys, they're probably in crunch. They've probably been in crunch. And, you know, and this is just going off of like knowledge from like what my friend was telling me. It's like, yeah, they have to be, like, there's no way they're not. And, you know, just hearing the disappointment in your voice and stuff like that, it really kind of made me, you know, because I know you probably didn't like doing it, but I mean, things, you know, like have to be done, you know, in that sense. And you guys are so close. We're literally, what is it, less than like 13 days away from Alpha 2 launch. I mean, what's been the scariest part about making an MMORPG for you?
What's been the scariest part? Ooh, that's a good question.
Putting yourself out there and letting people criticize you?
Honestly, you know what? The funny thing is I think the scariest part is also the most rewarding part. They're like one and the same.
Risk versus reward?
I think that the transparent development approach is both the scariest and rewarding thing.
I can only imagine. Even in my chat, just to be transparent with how I feel about the game is like risk and reward there.
You know, there's a level of understanding that comes with following development of a project this size that not everybody gets. And some people may get it at some times and then they forget about it at other times, right? And that can always be scary because, you know, you rely on voices in the community to help spread understanding about what the team is really going through. And I will say that the team is going through some shit right now, right?
Absolutely.
We are on the
they going through it,
addressing issues. We are, you know, working very long hours.
I'm sorry, team.
We're doing it because
I'm part of the problem
to succeed at the development of this project for the fans, for the people who want to play the game.
Yeah.
And sometimes it can be sad to see certain commentary. Personally, myself, whenever I see negative commentary, it motivates me more. But that's I think unique. I don't think most people respond that way.
Well, I mean, we're human, right?
I love it. Hold on, there's a bear fuck you quote. This one. I love this so much.
And that hurt, you know?
This is Steven.
I think that flipped the switch in me where I was like, okay, fuck you, watch this.
Hell yeah, dude. That's Steven. Fuck you, watch this.
It sucks whenever you're making something you're very passionate about and people don't like it, right? Yeah. It's as a content creator for YouTube, right? If I make a video, I put a lot of time in and then I just get a bunch of dislikes and negative comments. It makes me feel like shit. I'm like, oh God, I thought I actually did good, you know? Absolutely. And I can only imagine like coming from that, especially with so much, right? Because I feel like the genre right now for MMOs is just, it's bad, Steven. Like, I'm sure you know, because you're doing like, I saw this TikTok of Throne Liberty and there's a bunch of bots in Throne Liberty. It's a free to play game. And it's just, I fear that for Ashes because it's like the barrier of entry is so low. It's $15 a month. That's it. No box cost, no anything. And I fear that I'm going to log in and see that in Ashes and be like, oh, hell no. And just like report. And, you know, I can't imagine what it's like from your perspective to, you know, I was talking with,
$15
we were going live and
dollars per month per account. It's not a negligible cost if you're botting. Like free games, botting it's part of like free games like Lost Ark, Throne and Liberty, and like all these things. But for like World of Warcraft, there was botting, and they even had to do like buy the expansions and pay the monthly subscription. So it's not like it's not going to happen, but it's not negligible.
And also just seeing like where your idea of Ashes was probably back in 2015, 2016.
Right.
And like how reflecting on that now, like, and you actually seeing your game like in front of you, is that a surreal experience for you?
Oh, every day is surreal for sure. Absolutely. And you know what you talked about with regards to the MMO market, you know, it is sad, but from my perspective, that's opportunity. That's the opportunity statement.
Right?
Oh,
absolutely.
It is a shitty situation for my fellow fans that love to play these games to see the state of the market in the way it is, and I think we all agree and know, what that state is. But I see that as the opportunity statement. But yeah, it is definitely it is a surreal experience to log in to Ashes today and look back 3 years ago and see what Ashes was, right, or 4 years ago, or before the UE5 move. Like there's a lot, there's been a lot of history in the development of this project. Back from when we were a team of a dozen people, to today over 200. So
it's wild.
And the funny thing is, I will say, like, the stages have been drastically different experiences internally, not just with regards to the product, but like, what my day-to-day is a drastically different experience a year ago and the year before that and the year before that, each of them being unique, right?
That's awesome.
Yeah,
well,
100%.
Have you hired an assistant? Like, I know that position, it looks like it's been filled.
I honestly, I consider the entire production team my assistants.
Oh no, Steven, you need someone helping you, dude. Get like an AI bot or something to like a scheduler or something, dude.
Look, I know. I moved away from that approach when it got too late, and yeah, that is something. It is that is a different topic.
Well, I would love to continue talking with you. I really. Unless you want to keep talking.
Right.
I mean,
last little bit is alien talk. So we're gonna move on from that. That was really, really good interview. I already liked this. I already gave a comment saying that I was gonna watch it later. Wow, it has 13 likes. Holy shit. That's pretty cool. But yeah, that was a good interview. Learned a lot. Had a lot of good topics. We even had like recurring topics like with the PvP and PvX. So good job, Vlhadus. You did great. Really love Steven's candidness on that one as well.